Welcome to the Justice Watchers podcast. This is a series by Defenders Coalition, an organization that works to champion the safety, security, and well-being of human rights defenders in Kenya. I'm Kevin Mochiro, and I'll be your host for this season. This is the second season of the Justice Watchers podcast, where human rights defenders not only explore the most pressing human rights issues, but also get to share and tell their stories candidly and boldly. During this season, the podcast sets out to amplify the voices of women human rights defenders on the front lines, sharing powerful stories that inspire action for equality and human dignity. Defenders Coalition is proud to recognize the work of human rights defenders. And our guest on this episode is Dr. Njoki Wamai. Welcome to the Justice Watchers podcast, Njoki. Karibu, and it is a pleasure to actually meet with you.
It's mine too. It's also a very great pleasure actually to meet you.
We've known one another online and finally it has happened.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So tell me, Njoki, going straight into it, tell me about the person, Njoki Wamai, before the title doctor and academia came in.
Yeah. The person that my mother knows. Yeah, for me, I think I have my history. Maybe I was born in Nyeri. I lived in Nyeri all the way, I think, till I was 18, high school, primary school and high school with my parents. My parents are, one is a teacher, now retired. My father was a primary school teacher and my mother was running business. But there was always my uncle, who was then very famous because he was an activist. Yeah, he's called Wangondu Kariuki, but he since passed on in 2000. And so I grew up with this shadow of an uncle who was either in jail because Moi had arrested him. He was the first person actually to be arrested by the Moi regime for sedition. So for journalists, he's very, very, he's iconic, I would say, for journalism, because he was arrested. He was a journalist. He worked for Viva, if you knew Viva.
Yes, the magazine. But it was a women's magazine. Yeah, yes. I used to read that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it had politics inside there.
Sneaked in between fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they had to do that because of the nature of the authoritarian dictatorship regime we had. And so he was a journalist, but also he was part of Kenya.
Wow.
In the December 12th movement, which I think he was a secretary general. And so he was arrested in May 1982. I think May 5th, 1982. So just before the coup, which happened in August. And so he was arrested for sedition, and they said he was in possession of Pambana. So Pambana was a leaflet. I would call it it was like a party organ, not really party. It was for this December 12th movement and Kenya publication. And I've actually written about it with other activist friends. If anybody wants to read, you just go to revolutionarypapers.org. And if you Google Kenya, you will see myself, Kimani, and Wairimo, we've come and we've put together all revolutionary publications that existed in Kenya. Not all, but the ones we could find at least in the archive. I'm also a member of Ukombozi Library, which is one of Kenya's, again, revolutionary libraries, maybe the first public socialist radical library. And so the activists of the Kenya, people like Maina Kenyati, Shiraz Durani, Nazmin Durani, and many other activists from those two movements, Kenya in December 12th.
This is in the 80s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think when they've realized they're growing old, like 10 years ago, they gave Kimani, who is the librarian, their libraries, home libraries, which of course contained all these documents. Pambana, this one that my uncle was being arrested about. And we've housed them. They're actually there on Mokta Doda Street, where Ukombozi is, which I'm a member of the management committee. So for me, this uncle of mine was always hovering in our childhood. Because my mother, those days there was no mobile phones. And our neighbor called Nyinawawa Igajo is the one who had a phone. So my mother would go and pick calls from this uncle calling from Oslo every like 2 weeks.
So he was in exile.
Yes, he had to run away after the jail.
Yeah.
So he was in jail now between 1982 to 1986. So 86, him and Koigi, they actually literally, I think, ran away on foot across the border to Uganda. And you remember that time in Uganda, it's when Museveni
was just about to get into
power. Oh my
power.
God, and he's still there. Sorry, Ugandans.
Yes.
I know. So Museveni is actually the one who was more accommodating of all these revolutionary people. So Museveni housed them and gave them, I think, passports or, I don't know, maybe laissez-passer to go to Norway. And so they moved to Oslo. So my mother was always going to pick calls from this man at Nyinawa Igajo's house, who was our neighbor, because she had, that kring, kring.
That little
Exactly.
rotary phone, if we call it that. Yeah.
That one, I wish Gen Zs would see the rotary phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so he was hovering, and you must have been wondering, why isn't he here?
Yes, but of course there were all these conversations. My mother would say, you were on my back the day your uncle was tried in the High Court.
Wow.
And there's this picture. I love that Nation almost every 2 years, May 5th, the Nation 30, 40 years ago. You know that section where they say 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
In the paper, yes.
They always show him holding, in handcuffs, but smiling broadly, like never say die.
So I'm sitting with the staff with the progeny of legends, activist legends.
He was a legend, yeah. And of course, it also discouraged my mother and her sisters. And so she's always like, oh, activists, don't do that. Activism is bad. Look, do you know how your uncle suffered? Do you know you're on my back every time I went to every jail? He was in Naivasha, he was taken to, I don't know, Eldoret. You've
taken me back.
We went to all those places together with her, me on her back.
Wow.
In the mid 80s so my mother's always like, no, forget about activism.
Let me ask you, Njoki. We know your uncle's passed on.
Yeah.
But what would you tell him right now with you now also following in his footsteps, like from the Mgongo to now to the streets as an activist? What would you want to tell him?
No, I'm proud of him. Thank you, Uncle Wangondu. No, I am proud that he inspired not just me, but a generation also of Kenyans at that time when it was not safe to speak up. He was like remember that was during the Cold War also.
Yes.
And Moi, in his, I don't know, wisdom or lack of it, he was like, of course, following the West blindly, probably without a lot of, or maybe, I don't know, maybe his people, they were thinking about why they chose that. So these people were like radical leftist Marxists.
Absolutely.
And unashamedly so. And also people who challenged an authoritarian regime, wrote about it, of course went to jail, got tortured, disappeared, came back, had to go to exile, live away from their families. And it took a toll, of course, on my mother's family. My shosho died in that, my mother's mother died. He couldn't be there for that, for the funeral. And of course, it created this fear. Activism is a bad thing. But thank God for that, he inspired. And even now, even if you go to where the village he was born in, Gyakanja, they're always like, yeah, that's the one person they remember.
So I can hear there's a lot of gratitude, and you're even smiling as you say that.
Yeah.
And what about when your family sees the work that you do, or when they found out that you are also going to go into activism? Were they like, sis, we've gone down this way before. No,
No, they're so proud. And we have this like WhatsApp group of my cousins from now my mom's and the uncle's family. And everybody's like, yeah, we are that DNA. It's always like, I saw you on TV, or I saw you like Wangondu San on the other day was on during Mandamano. We were all there. It's like, yeah, that's our blood. We keep going,
Yeah.
It's us. If you're not doing activism, what the hell are you doing with your life? Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement. And then after University of Nairobi, you found yourself working at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. It feels like, was that a natural progression for you in your studies, in how you?
No, it's actually a very interesting story. I mean, yes, there's that context of, as I was saying, my uncle, he used to send me very beautiful postcards telling me, you are a star. Those desiderata, desiderata?
Yes,
Go
I used to know
placidly.
all those words.
Me too,
yeah.
thank God. Where's
It used to
Miss
hang
Wawero?
next to my desk.
Yes.
Yeah, go placidly amid the noise and haste. And remember what peace there may be in silence.
And see what peace there is in silence. So thank God to my Bishop Gatimo Gandu girls headmistress. We used to call her Wesh, but her name is Miss Wawero. Shout out to her. She made us cram that. So if you are caught making noise, I like that. Instead of a bad punishment, come and recite Desiderata. Yeah. So even my uncle, when he was away in whatever, he would send me postcards from Norway, and they'd be like, you are, remember, I don't know, you're a star of the universe, no less than
the trees and stars. You have the right to be here. Yeah.
I know.
Bless Uncle Wangondo.
Yes, bless
Can
him.
I call him Uncle Wangondo
yes,
as well?
He was.
Yeah.
He was. Exactly. So all those, I think having that context, and then coming and then going to where? And also, I think when I was young, I also need to thank my parents, because my parents never put me in a box. I've seen even my relatives, my many friends, people wonder, why are you so confident? No nonsense, no everything, no. I'm like, I was never actually given a box of what I could be or not be. And I remember people be like, oh, this is your daughter. She's always talking. Then my dad is like, chana na yeye tu. You see? So I think that also, it made me, and then I was never told a girls behave this way. One day my mother tried, why can't you be like Sijui, the neighbor who is, those are nice girls. You're always walking around talking, whatever. I was a youth activist, whether it's in the church, from the church, started some youth groups.
So your activism started machinally proper, grassroots.
Yeah. I was always that person organizing other young people. I don't know, let's go hike, let's do what, let's do. And so after, when I went to uni, I became, of course, it was now freedom away from the parents. And it helped me blossom also further, because I vied to be, I even never thought, actually, I don't even know what inspired me, but I vied to be Sonu.
Wow.
At the University of Nairobi.
Wow.
But I wanted to be treasurer in the year, but I never got it.
But you well done for trying.
No, yeah. But it was also very interesting. Politics is dirty. I vied for so many things. But finally I became a women students representative in my campus at the Upper Kabete. And of course, after that, so many people will invite you for women leadership trainings. But the most profound was the feminist leadership training I went for young women at the Young Women Leadership Institute. I met feminists. I met women I wanted to be like. And also I met women who, like, one of them is Professor Oloni Shakin. She's now the Deputy Vice Chancellor at King's College London, where I went to study actually for my master's. And Zida, and they were the first to say, like, oh yeah, we are feminists. And like, oh, I think I'm one, this thing sounds, yeah, if you're doing this, you're fighting for women's rights. I'm like, I'm a feminist too. But they helped me put words into, I was always a bit contrarian. I was not this nice little young woman who conforms. And yeah, so they helped me. I mean, they didn't like tell me, but through their actions and the things they did, it helped me kind of realize who I was within the greater context of things, meet other people who are a bunch of women like me, who challenged the norm, who refused to be put into a box. So I think with that, even when I was done with uni at the University of Nairobi, because I studied food science, though I have a PhD in politics.
Wow. That is not even on the internet. Did you erase that?
No, it's there.
I didn't see it.
It's there, actually.
Food scientist to activist,
yes, but I wanted to be a lawyer, like my uncle, of course. He became a lawyer after. So and he was always, you'll take over my law firm, whatever. He died anyway before. But I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I missed, I don't know, one point. So unless the only option was to pay the private, and we didn't have that money. But anyway, so I studied science. I love science even today. I think I'm a polyglot. I love.
You
I am
love
a
knowledge.
geek. I love
You love
exactly.
learning.
I love learning.
And you're in the right place
and I
for
enjoy
learning. Yeah.
And I enjoy teaching all.
That is so. I mean, whoever's in your class or whoever you teach must be very lucky to have you.
Oh,
there's something you said there that you were at the Young Feminist Leadership Institute. You met women that you had wanted to meet.
Yeah.
Apart from the two that you had mentioned, who were these women that you had admired and you're like, wow, I'm now in their space?
I mean, that was around the time I was in uni. So those two, one is Kenyan, the other is Nigerian. Even just within that time at university, I got an internship. And I met this woman, she's called Donna Sherald, an African American. She was like, I'm a feminist. And I worked for her like a little intern. She met me in a conference. I had this stupid confidence. So I saw a call for papers, like those university. And I applied like an idiot. And I even did some fake research. I mean, now with a PhD, I'm like, what nonsense was that? But I just love the guts. And I presented, I think I was talking about young women and HIV and choices for, and she's met me because she was running some public health program on young women and something. And she employed me as an intern. And I mean, bless her, she paid me 1,000 a day.
Wow.
In university those days. God, I was rich. Anyway,
yeah.
I know. And she's the one who kept saying, I'm a feminist. And I'd be like, oh my, what's this feminist?
You did your own research and realized?
Yes, no, but the life she lived, like she was independent, she was this, she was very articulate on whatever she believed in. I'm like, this is who I am, and this is what I want to be. Then I must be this feminist.
Do you think feminism in Kenya gets a bad rep?
Very bad rep.
And why?
It does, largely because of course, the culture we are in, and not just Kenya, everywhere in the world, feminism, because of the patriarchal culture that is most dominant. And also, remember, if I come and ask you, move the seat for me, even you'll not be amused, because patriarchy has actually, okay, now this is the feminist scholar in me. In Africa, actually, patriarchy was not that I mean, it was prevalent, but it was not
oppressive.
That centered.
Can we say oppressive?
I mean, patriarchy has always been oppressive.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to make the case for patriarchy is also very, very Western. It's a very, very, male dominance, male everything, male leadership, male. In Africa, if we look at many African societies, before patriarchy like moved in and dissented matrilineal cultures.
Yes.
I'm glad you're in Kilifi, but just right there among the Digos, they were properly matrilineal.
I was impressed to find out there are a lot more societies that were matrilineal, even amongst the Digo.
Yes,
and there were some sub-clans that were like that as well.
Yeah. My friend did an entire PhD on the Digo and cash transfers and found it's the only place cash transfers have worked in Kenya. Why? Because they're matrilineal. People say Kikuyus are matrilineal. They're not. They're more of matriarchal. So there were so many matrilineal cultures in Africa. There's one in Malawi. There's what are they called? A huge group in, what do you call this country? Guinea-Bissau. So many places. I was actually once looking at a map of matrilineal cultures in the early 1900s and late, or maybe half of that late early 19th century. There were so many. Then colonialism came, dissented that. So when you have matrilineal and matriarchal cultures, patriarchy is just one of the ways. It's not the dominant, And so there's more space for women to be, more space for women, to lead, and more space for centering women's ways of being. And most of them, they are caring, collaborative, And I'm not saying that women were perfect. Of course, we had women who did horrible things. But I think that space existed in the global south. So in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. But in the West, I haven't seen it. It was purely like hardcore patriarchy. So with colonialism and slavery, this now became what were like Western cultures became centered and universal around the world. Yeah.
So bring it back to my question of why, in your opinion, is even the whole feminist movement, people look at it and, have a difficult time trying to accept feminism in Kenya, and even within the activist space.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is the case?
As I said, first is patriarchy, a very dominating patriarchal culture. And I keep saying, look, when you find most people do not want, they're safe, but also dominance gives you safety. Those of you who are in power, so that is men. And think about it, even at the even global level, white men, and they're the ones who are busy killing like other people, and white straight men for that matter. And so even at our level here in Kenya, men, after that time where this whole matrilineal cultures were discentered, they've always been very dominant. And with dominance, I think makes people hugely insecure if you want to share the space, and rightly so. So you want to share the space, and these people become very insecure and fragile. That's why we have fragile masculinity. Yeah. Like, how dare you question me, or why are you, why do you want even? And I think men need to realize all this straight, rich, because those are the people who are even most fragile, dominant, whether it's even a dominant ethnicity, you'll find, or a dominant race, they're the most people who are like, no, fighting feminists. And now it's become even worse, because with social media, we've created, I can't even mention those like two names, because it's giving them even more airtime.
Yeah.
But it's created this man. What are they called? They even have a name. Those kind of.
This is about you. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's if you look at like those kind of people, they are extremely people with a fragile masculinity.
In the work that you do as a lecturer at USIU, how are you trying to center women in academia, in spaces like that, and tell them that you have the right to be here?
Yeah.
And even to tell the men, this is not. Yeah. This is just good living, not even good politics. This is just good living, being a good human.
Exactly.
Where you're trying to center women and what feminism is about.
Exactly. I guess I do it by first living my life. My life is a testament to live to the things I believe in. I don't just teach, I live. And as a feminist, an African feminist who also believes in intersectionality. You've read Kimberly Crenshaw, like making sure everybody is included. And through my life, of course, many people will be like, "Oh, this woman, she's too much, she's too whatever." But those people who get to know me and know me very well, they'll see I center everybody. I live a life where, how do we make this space equal for all of us? How do we make this space happy and not just me as an African woman, for another person who is like a person living with disability also. Because that's what feminism is about. And that's one thing people don't understand. It's not like women fighting men or whatever. It's creating an inclusive space for everybody. Whether,
And I admire that about feminism, and having learned from that, who in your opinion still needs to be at the table and is missing from the table here in Kenya, even within that activist space? Who have we forgot? Who are we forgetting?
I think there are not enough still of us at a global level first. There are not enough Black women on the table at all. And African women, as much as say we have African American women, African women are still not at the table. But here in Kenya, marginalized women, but I'm glad. Recently, I was actually doing some work looking at how do we get more young women and girls on the table, and the most marginalized, especially because we can't still be, now we are advocating, and we need to continue that advocating, say now for equal pay. And there's some girls who are still being married off, who never find because they went through FGM and then they got married off quickly. So even beyond, they'll never even get to the workspace and do productive, gender work. they'll just be like reproducing, what we call reproductive
It's
roles.
the cycle, right?
It's a cycle. And so we need to get marginalized women on the table. We need to get queer women on the table. People need to stop thinking that, that's why I'm saying we need to think through an intersectional lens, because many mainstream feminists will be your very straight maendeleo ya wanawake kind of type, or mainstream NGO kind of woman. But we need to think through who needs to be on the table is not on the table. Very marginalized women are not the table. Queer women are not on the table because people will bring their whole, I don't know, religiosity or whatever they believe in. Women with disability are not on the table. Yeah. So all those groups, I think we need to think through, and we should stop moving unless we are all on this table. Yeah. And people should take an example like Crystal Asige,
absolutely,
a blind woman who is seeing further than the current governor who has his eyes. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. Who is seeing further than the current governor? That's very powerful.
Yeah.
You teach at USIU.
Yeah.
How are you making your classrooms or even student life more inclusive? And I want to touch on something we were talking around earlier, where some students themselves are not being seen in the ways that they want to be seen by other lecturers or even other students. How you, and I'm really impressed that you're also creating a safe space for them. Could you just elaborate on that?
No, I absolutely. First, after, of course, I studied and I came back after my PhD, I wanted to create, I'd said, fine, if I'm going to go and teach for some time, I want to create those spaces. I have the ideal, safe space for a student for learning. And in my studying, now that I was in school for many, many years, I was in spaces where I was excluded. Remember, like in Cambridge, I was the one Black student in my PhD class.
Wow.
The only one.
You'd think in this day and age there'd be more.
No, now things have changed.
Yeah.
But then, that was like around 2015. No, is it 15? Yeah. Yeah, 16,
10 years
15.
ago.
Yeah, exactly. I would be the one Black student in my whole PhD cohort. And I would say something, you know how, like the way we have mansplaining, now white-splaining. You make, maybe we're reflecting on a methodological book or something. And this lecturer also will pretend probably they never heard me. And then some white British guy with his British accent will say something and be like, yeah. And I'd be like, wait a minute.
I just said that.
I just said that. What the hell is that? And so I know what it's to feel excluded. But for me, maybe I was not that affected because remember, I'd come from a human rights background. I had worked for Kenya Human Rights Commission. Before that, actually, I worked for Amnesty. I was telling you the story of how I went into working for human rights.
Yeah.
Because after I left uni, I worked now as a quality controller because I had a food science degree in those companies that do vegetable export to Sainsbury's. You've been to the UK,
Tesco's, yeah.
And these guys were contracted by all these companies. And for me, I went there, I think with my, I don't know where, human rights lens. All I would see is human rights violations of these poor women who work so many long hours, cut all these vegetables. And then if anything happens, they would actually be charged. So they're earning like 500 or 400 shillings a day, and they had to pay. And for me, I think even my mother keeps saying, you kept calling every day how terrible and whatever. And they would be like, you know what, now you can quit. Come and stay in Nyeri. We have enough food for you.
Wow.
Because you're always complaining. And I'm so glad because at that time again, Wangondu's wife partner was running Amnesty. That is Miriam Kahiga. Also, I really celebrate her, human rights activist who taught me so much. And she's like, you're always complaining about this where you work. Why don't you come and write up something about it? Yeah, and I did. I did a short report about that. We put the human rights violations in the Amnesty report of that year. And that's how somehow volunteering there for 2 months, of course, because now I was like in my element. This is where I should always have been. And finally, guys, in Kenya Human Rights Commission, someone was leaving called Josephine Gekoyo. And because we had worked together through the few months, she's like, I think you should take this job. And I applied and I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a little going back. But coming back to what you were saying about
creating safe spaces within the classroom.
In the classroom, I think it's so important. And it is so gratifying. Like this semester, I had 3 blind students.
Wow.
And they came and told me, you know what? In this class, this is the first time I have felt seen. I wanted to cry. You know,
Thank you.
This is the first time I felt seen. You went out of your way to make us feel seen. You went out of your way to make us feel like we mattered in this class. Because we have lots of students, thanks to Mastercard with disability on Mastercard scholarships. So we have a responsibility. And for me, it's those kind of things I do, not just say students with disability, also non-binary conforming students, And one of the things I do I've started doing in most of my classes, I'm probably good, is the privilege walk.
What is the privilege
walk? Oh my God, it's amazing. Everybody should do the privilege walk. In the US, they do it a lot. So you get everybody.
I want to know if you could explain for the people who are listening and watching.
We all stand in one line. It's basically to assess everybody's privilege and know where we stand. And not really to assess, it's self-reflection. And so we stand like in the center of the class and we do a privilege walk. And then we are all in one line. So we are all equal when we are starting. And then from there, the instructor or whoever who is facilitating this asks a bunch of questions. So take one step forward if you have always had food. If you have never slept, no. Yeah, take one step forward if you have never slept without food. And then people...
That happens, yeah.
Take another step forward if your identity... I mean, you can love who you want to love without...
Yeah. So you did that.
So exactly.
Yeah.
Take one step backward if, when now it's not, you're not equal. If you, because of your gender, you have to hide something about yourself. So you cannot be fully like whatever. Present. Yeah. It is so powerful.
So you did that in the
I do that. At least this and last semester, I do that. And it's always like, oh my God. And it's always full of, I never realized I actually I'm not that privileged. I've been walking around, or I've never realized actually that so many people have gone through so many challenges. It's amazing. So I'm making that now part of the culture of my classes. And from that, it starts a new conversation because everybody now sits with their vulnerability. And then also it becomes a safe space.
There's a lot of authenticity in the class.
Yeah. Others, of course, will lie because you'll see somebody like, should I take forward, backward, whatever. But the majority will be in that space of, oh my God.
I love the fact that every time you talk about academia and teaching, you smile.
I know, I love it.
And I'm so to more teachers like you.
Yeah. But also because I'm an activist, I'm a scholar activist. I don't think I would be teaching. In fact, every time, even when I'm so bored, I'm always like, let me just go to class for my students. Because that's where I get my joy.
Your joy. Yeah.
And sometimes I remember one time I was so pissed off because of some politics. And I was thinking, I wish there was a helicopter that could lift me from my house and just land me in my class and take me back to my house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kudos to you. And there's one element, a word that is important to me is Utu.
Utu, yes.
Ubuntu, humanness.
Yeah.
How does that translate into your activism around women, around matters of, just injustices right through?
First, for me, Utu, Ubuntu, and all forms of, I call them African social philosophies.
Yes.
I've taught a few times African philosophy, a course I absolutely love, because it brings back some of the things I care about, decolonizing ourselves. Because once we decolonize ourselves, we find back to who we really are. And as I was saying, many times because we are so steeped in Western ideas of thinking, Western modernity, Western ideas that have become universal, but they are not. They only belong to Europe, but they became
Part of the imported here.
yeah, and they were imported through force, colonialism, slavery. So even now in theory, in all this, one of the theories I use is decoloniality, decolonial theory, which is about let's go back to who we are. And if you think about Africans, we are very Utu. Utu is humanness. Nyinyi ni Waswahili, people from the coast. And even and there's one African philosopher, and even you don't even need to quote anybody. Think about it. What I like about our way of being also, which is the Utu, which talks about humanness and humanity, we also confer humanness. You don't become a human just as much as I love my liberal human rights, Western human rights, which says you're, like you're human because, you are already, when we look at, what do you call it? The Universal Declaration of Human
Rights, yes.
We are human because you're human. But when you come to the African context, people give you humanity. Utu. Yeah. Think about it.
And your humanness exists within that space of humanity.
Exactly. It exists with you as an individual, but also within this context. And that's why I'm sure umesikia watu wameambiwa, huyo si mtu. What is that?
I think for me, in my culture, even this phrase, Hana Utu. And I think
Utu.
If someone tells you Huna Utu, for me, that is the ultimate insight. Look at you, even your mouth.
Thank you. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You're not a person.
You're not a person.
And it tells you, because we confer humanity, and also you confer humanity to yourself by the actions you do to others. So it's profound. And we need to go back to African ethos. I'm not saying everything, because also not all. But even if you think about when it comes to human rights, and many times we find, sometimes when we think through liberal human rights, it can be in contradiction sometimes to these African values. But it's us now to infuse our African values and center a human rights practice based on Utu, Ubuntu, which means, exactly, which you cannot exist without others. And that's exactly the core of human rights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really interesting to look. The core of human rights is Utu.
Yeah.
It's
love.
Utu.
Love. And that's why I love love. I'm a romantic. Exactly. It's about love. If you care about if you care first about yourself, you care about others, you care about the environment. That's Absolutely. How even we look at human rights now. First generation, second generation, and third. It's Utu. It's you caring about the environment, you caring about others, and you caring about the individual.
We have to close this fantastic conversation, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like you to share a quote from another activist that inspires you, and why this quote inspires you.
No, I when you asked me a quote, actually, I was wondering which one. There are so many, There's like Thomas Sankara with his love. Revolutionaries and activists are inspired by great love. That's one. But just to wind up this, I will end with Alice Walker's quote, which says, "The rent activism is the rent activism is the rent we pay to live on this earth."
That's beautiful. Activism is the rent we pay to live on this earth.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Nashukuru sana.
Asante.
The Justice Watchers podcast is produced for Defenders Coalition. You can subscribe here on the YouTube channel so that you can keep up with all the episodes that are produced. You can follow Defenders Coalition on their social media channels. That is on Instagram at defenders.ke. On X, it's defenders.ke. On Facebook, it's Defenders Coalition, and you can check out the website, defenderscoalition.org. Thank you very much for watching.